Welcome to Miss Scarlett. Subscribe and don't miss out on Patreon. Have fun! In a small apartment, nestled between towering buildings, Emma stood before her mirror, fidgeting with the hem of a vibrant sundress. Her fingers trembled slightly as she smoothed out imaginary wrinkles, her heart racing with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The dress was a burst of color against the muted tones of her room. Splashes of yellow and orange danced across the fabric, reminiscent of a field of wildflowers in full bloom. It was everything Emma had ever wanted to wear, yet had never dared to before this moment. She took a deep breath, trying to calm the butterflies in her stomach. The reflection staring back at her was still a work in progress, a face caught between who she had been and who she was becoming. Her hair, now shoulder length, framed her face softly, though she still felt the phantom weight of the shortcut she'd worn for so many years. "You can do this," Emma whispered to herself, her voice barely audible even in the quiet of her room. She reached for a tube of lipstick, hesitating for a moment before applying a soft coral shade to her lips. The color brightened her face, bringing a hint of a smile to her previously anxious expression. With one last look in the mirror, Emma grabbed her purse and headed for the door. Each step felt monumental, as if she were crossing a threshold not just out of her apartment, but into a new chapter of her life. The elevator ride down to the lobby seemed to stretch on forever. Emma's mind raced with all the possible scenarios she might encounter outside. Would people stare? Would they whisper? Or worse, would they confront her? She closed her eyes, focusing on her breathing, trying to push away the negative thoughts. As the elevator doors slid open, Emma stepped out into the lobby. The doorman, an older gentleman who had always been kind to her, looked up from his newspaper. "Good morning, Miss Emma," he said, with a warm smile. "That's a lovely dress. Heading out to enjoy the sunshine?" Emma felt a wave of relief wash over her. "Yes, I thought I'd take a walk in the park," she replied, her voice steadier than she'd expected. "Well, you picked a perfect day for it. Enjoy yourself, dear." With a nod of thanks, Emma pushed through the heavy glass doors and stepped out onto the bustling sidewalk. The city was alive with the sounds of traffic, bits of conversation floating on the breeze, and the distant laughter of children. For a moment, Emma felt overwhelmed by it all, but she took another deep breath and began to walk. Her sandals clicked softly against the pavement as she made her way towards the nearby park. With each step, she became more aware of her surroundings, half expecting to catch someone giving her a strange look or whispering to their companion. But as she continued on her way, she realized that most people were caught up in their own worlds, barely sparing her a glance. The park entrance loomed ahead, an oasis of green amidst the concrete jungle. Emma paused at the wrought iron gates, her fingers brushing against the cool metal. This was it, a public space where she'd be more visible, more exposed. Her heart began to race again, but she pushed forward, reminding herself of how far she'd come. As she stepped onto the winding path that snaked through the park, Emma felt the tension in her shoulders begin to ease. The sounds of the city faded, replaced by the gentle rustling of leaves and the chirping of birds. The scent of freshly cut grass and blooming flowers filled the air, bringing with it a sense of calm. Emma found herself wandering deeper into the park, her eyes taking in the vibrant colors of the flower beds and the dappled sunlight filtering through the trees. She came across a small pond, its surface broken only by the occasional ripple caused by ducks gliding across the water. Near the pond stood an empty bench, inviting her to rest. Emma smoothed her dress beneath her as she sat down, feeling the warmth of the sun-heated wood through the fabric. She closed her eyes for a moment, tilting her face up towards the sky, allowing herself to simply exist in this peaceful moment. As she sat there, lost in thought, Emma reflected on her journey. The years of confusion and denial, the moment of realization, the fear of coming out, and the slow, sometimes painful process of transitioning. Each step had been a challenge, but sitting here now, in a park on a beautiful day, wearing a dress that made her feel truly herself, she knew it had all been worth it. "Excuse me, dear." A gentle voice broke through Emma's reverie. She opened her eyes to see an elderly lady standing before her, leaning slightly on a wooden cane. The woman's face was a map of wrinkles, each line telling a story of a life well lived. Her eyes, though, sparkled with a youthful vitality that immediately put Emma at ease. "I hope I'm not disturbing you," the lady continued, her voice warm and kind. "I just wanted to tell you how absolutely lovely you look. That dress of yours, it's like you've brought a piece of sunshine right into the park." Emma felt a blush creep up her cheeks, a mixture of surprise and joy flooding through her. "Thank you," she managed to say, her voice catching slightly with emotion. "That's very kind of you to say." The elderly lady smiled, the corners of her eyes crinkling. "Oh, it's nothing but the truth, my dear. In my day, we didn't have dresses quite so vibrant. It does my old heart good to see such beautiful colors. Do you mind if I sit with you for a moment? These old legs of mine need a rest now and then." "Of course," Emma replied, scooting over slightly to make more room. The woman lowered herself onto the bench with a soft sigh of relief. That's better," she said, adjusting her position. "Now, tell me, dear, what brings you to the park on this fine day? Are you meeting someone special?" Emma shook her head, a small smile playing on her lips. "No, I wanted to enjoy the day, to be outside, to feel the sun." The elderly lady nodded knowingly. "Sometimes that's the very best reason of all, to simply exist in the world, to feel a part of it all. You know, when I was younger, I used to come to this very park to do just that. It was my escape, my little piece of paradise in the city." As the woman spoke, Emma felt herself relaxing more and more. There was something comforting about her presence, a sense of acceptance that Emma had rarely experienced from strangers. "I'm Emma," she found herself saying, offering her hand to the woman. "Pleased to meet you, Emma. I'm Margaret," the lady replied, taking Emma's hand in both of hers. Her grip was surprisingly strong, her skin soft and papery against Emma's. "Now, Emma, if you don't mind an old woman prying, you seem to have something on your mind. Is everything all right?" Emma hesitated for a moment, unsure of how much to share, but there was something about Margaret's kind eyes and gentle demeanor that made her want to open up. I'm transgender," she said softly, the words still feeling new and vulnerable on her tongue. "I'm still early in my transition, and today is the first time I've really gone out dressed like this. I was feeling a bit anxious, to be honest." Margaret's expression didn't change, her smile remaining warm and understanding. "Oh, my dear girl," she said, patting Emma's hand. "Thank you for sharing that with me. It takes a great deal of courage to be true to oneself, especially in a world that doesn't always understand. But let me tell you something. That courage, that authenticity, it shines through. It's what drew me to you in the first place." Emma felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes, overwhelmed by Margaret's words. "Really?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Absolutely," Margaret affirmed. "You have a light about you, Emma. It's in the way you hold yourself, the way you smile. That dress isn't what makes you beautiful, though it certainly doesn't hurt," she added with a wink. "It's the joy of finally being yourself that truly brings life to this park." A tear slipped down Emma's cheek, and she quickly wiped it away. "I'm sorry," she said with a small laugh. "I didn't expect to get so emotional." Margaret squeezed her hand gently. "No need to apologize, dear. Emotions are what make us human. They're to be celebrated, not hidden away." As they sat there, a comfortable silence fell between them. Emma watched as a group of children ran by, their laughter echoing across the park. She felt a sense of belonging wash over her, as if she were truly a part of this scene, not just an observer. "You know," Margaret said after a while, "I've lived a long life, seen a lot of changes in this world. Some good, some not so good. But one thing I've learned is that the most beautiful thing in this world is when someone finds the courage to be who they truly are. It's not always easy, mind you, but it's always worth it." Emma nodded, feeling the truth of Margaret's words resonate deep within her. "It hasn't been easy," she admitted. "There are days when I wonder if I'm doing the right thing, if it's all worth it." "Oh, those doubts will come and go," Margaret said, with a knowing nod. "But look at you now, sitting here in the sun, being yourself. That's not nothing, my dear. That's everything." As they continued to talk, Emma felt the last of her anxiety melting away. She found herself sharing stories of her journey, the moment she first admitted to herself who she really was, the fear and excitement of coming out to her family, the small victories and setbacks along the way. Margaret listened attentively, offering words of encouragement and sharing her own experiences of facing adversity and finding strength. Though their struggles were different, Emma found comfort in the universal themes of perseverance and self-discovery. "You remind me a bit of my granddaughter," Margaret said at one point, a fond smile playing on her lips. "She's about your age, I'd say. Always pushing boundaries, challenging the status quo. It gives me hope for the future, seeing young people like you and her being so brave." Emma felt a warmth spread through her chest at being compared to Margaret's granddaughter. It was a simple thing, but it made her feel accepted, normal, part of the fabric of everyday life. As the afternoon wore on, more people filled the park. Couples strolled hand in hand, families spread out picnic blankets on the grass, and joggers weaved their way along the paths. Emma found herself relaxing more and more, her earlier fears seeming distant and unfounded. At one point, a young girl ran up to their bench, her eyes wide with wonder. "I love your dress," she exclaimed to Emma, her smile revealing a missing front tooth. "You look like a princess!" Emma felt her heart swell with joy. "Thank you," she said, her voice filled with genuine happiness. "That's very sweet of you to say." The girl's mother called her back, offering an apologetic smile to Emma and Margaret. As the girl skipped away, Margaret chuckled softly. "See? Even the little ones can see your light, my dear." As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the park. Margaret sighed and began to gather herself to leave. "Well, Emma, I'm afraid these old bones of mine are telling me it's time to head home, but I want you to know how much I've enjoyed our chat today." Emma felt a pang of sadness at the thought of Margaret leaving. Their conversation had been unexpected, but deeply meaningful. "I've enjoyed it too," she said sincerely. "Thank you for everything." Margaret stood slowly, leaning on her cane. "No need for thanks, my dear. Just promise me something, will you?" "Of course," Emma replied, standing as well. "Promise me you'll keep shining that light of yours. The world needs more of it, more people brave enough to be themselves. Can you do that for me?" Emma nodded, feeling a lump form in her throat. "I promise," she said softly. Margaret reached out and patted Emma's cheek gently. "That's my girl. Now, go on and enjoy the rest of this beautiful day. And remember, every time you feel that doubt creeping in, think of this moment. Think of how you felt sitting here, being yourself." With one last warm smile, Margaret turned and began to make her way down the path. Emma watched her go, feeling a profound sense of gratitude for this chance encounter that had meant so much. As Margaret's figure receded into the distance, Emma took a deep breath, feeling the warm evening air fill her lungs. She looked down at her dress, the vibrant colors now softened in the golden light of the setting sun. For the first time, she didn't see it as a costume or a disguise, but as an expression of her true self. With a newfound confidence, Emma began to walk through the park. She held her head high, her steps light and purposeful. The anxiety that had plagued her earlier in the day had faded away, replaced by a sense of peace and self-assurance. As she passed other park-goers, Emma found herself smiling and nodding in greeting. Some returned her smile, others were lost in their own worlds, but none gave her the negative attention she had once feared. She was just another person enjoying a beautiful day in the park, and that realization was profoundly liberating. Emma's mind wandered back to Margaret's words about shining her light. She thought about all the times she had dimmed that light out of fear or uncertainty. But now, walking through the park in her sundress, she felt that light burning brighter than ever before. She found herself at the edge of a small clearing where a group of people had gathered to watch a street performer. Without hesitation, Emma joined the crowd, allowing herself to be swept up in the joy and laughter of the moment. As she clapped along with the music, she caught sight of her reflection in a nearby pond. The person looking back at her was smiling, confident, alive. As the sun dipped below the horizon and the park lights began to flicker on, Emma realized she had spent the entire day outside. She had walked further and stayed out longer than she had initially planned, but she didn't regret a single moment. Making her way towards the park exit, Emma felt a profound sense of accomplishment. This day, which had started with so much anxiety and uncertainty, had turned into something beautiful and affirming. She had not only survived her first outing dressed as her true self, but she had thrived. As she reached the park gates, Emma paused for a moment, looking back at the paths she had walked, the bench where she had sat with Margaret, the pond where she had seen her reflection. Each of these spots now held a special significance, markers of a day that had changed her in ways she was only beginning to understand. With one last deep breath of the flower-scented air, Emma stepped out of the park and back onto the city streets. The bustle of the city surrounded her once more, but this time, She didn't feel overwhelmed or out of place. She felt like she belonged, like she was exactly where she was meant to be. As she walked home, the light of the setting sun catching the fabric of her dress and making it glow, Emma felt a sense of excitement for what the future might hold. She knew there would still be challenges ahead, but after today, she felt ready to face them. She had found strength she didn't know she possessed, and validation from unexpected sources. Emma's fingers brushed against the soft fabric of her dress as she walked, each touch a reminder of the joy and freedom she had experienced today. She made a mental note to buy more colorful clothes, to allow herself to fully embrace this part of her identity that she had kept hidden for so long. As she approached her apartment building, Emma saw her reflection in the glass doors. The person looking back at her was transformed, not by the dress or the makeup, but by the confidence and joy that radiated from within. She smiled at her reflection, a genuine, unguarded smile that reached her eyes. The doorman greeted her as she entered, his kind eyes crinkling at the corners. "Had a good day, Miss Emma?" he asked. "The best," Emma replied, her voice full of warmth and gratitude. "Absolutely the best." As she rode the elevator up to her floor, Emma felt a sense of coming full circle. She had left this morning full of fear and doubt, and she was returning filled with hope and self-assurance. The apartment that had felt like a protective cocoon now felt more like a launching pad for future adventures. Emma unlocked her door and stepped inside, kicking off her sandals with a contented sigh. She made her way to the mirror where she had started her day, standing before it once more. The reflection that greeted her now was different, not in appearance, but in the energy it exuded. The anxiety was gone from her eyes, replaced by a quiet confidence. She touched the coral lipstick on her lips, remembering the moment of hesitation before she had applied it that morning. Now, it felt like a badge of honor, a small but significant sign of her true self. As she began to get ready for bed, Emma found herself already planning her next outing. Perhaps she would try a different park, or maybe a cafe. The world suddenly seemed full of possibilities, places to explore, and experiences to have. Settling into bed, Emma closed her eyes, the events of the day playing through her mind like a beautiful movie. She thought of Margaret's kind words, the little girl's innocent compliment, the feeling of the sun on her skin as she walked through the park. Each memory was a treasure, a building block in the foundation of her new life. As sleep began to overtake her, Emma made a silent promise to herself. She would continue to be brave, to shine her light, to embrace every aspect of who she was. Today had been a beginning, a first step on a long journey, but it had shown her that she was strong enough to walk that path. With a smile on her lips and peace in her heart, Emma drifted off to sleep, dreaming of sundresses and park benches, of kind strangers and newfound confidence. Tomorrow was a new day, full of possibilities, and for the first time in a long time, Emma couldn't wait to see what it would bring.
Thanks for watching, my girlies! Be sure to check out Patreon for more!